So good evening, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of the Scottish Polish Cultural Association, it's my pleasure to welcome you to another in our wee series of talks and short lectures. For those who don't know us, the Scottish Polish Cultural Association arranges a variety of culture-related events in the Edinburgh area, at least in normal times, usually connected with music, theatre, literature, or a variety of other areas. If you're interested in what we do, I'd advise check out our website, which is down at the bottom here, scottpols.co.uk. We can also be found on Facebook at facebook.com/ScottPols. If you're interested in joining the association, it's only 10 quid, and you'll be the first to know about upcoming events such as this one, and well, hopefully in the not too near future, our normal in-person types of events. So tonight's talk will start in a minute. I'll just very briefly explain how it's going to work. Our speakers will speak for around about 50 odd minutes, just under an hour. So if anybody hasn't already, I'd advise you to please press the mute button on your device. Again, usually located in the bottom left. And after the talk, we'll have the questions and answers session. To ask questions, you just use the chat function. If you give me a second, there we go. There are the instructions. Just write them in the chat and I'll ask them to our panel members. Or if you wish, you can also ask directly yourself. Just say in the chat, I would like to ask a question or something along those lines, and we'll unmute you when it's your turn. We'll just make a list of questions and ask them first come, first served. All I would ask is that if you're asking a question yourself, if you could just keep them reasonably concise and on topic. That way we can get through as many questions as possible if there are quite a few of them. But without further ado, it's my great pleasure to hand over to three of the trustees of the Great Polish Map of Scotland and the Borders, and they'll be talking about this unique outdoor item for the next 50 odd minutes. So it's I'll just hand over to Micah Kozwoska, Keith Burns, and first to David Cameron. I'll just stop screen sharing and we should have the new presentation.
Dzień dobry. When I first saw the concrete map of Scotland in 1994, it was almost hidden in high vegetation growing in the lochs and seas. The map's mossy surface was covered in spent cartridges from clay pigeon shooting. First images. Keith Burns, are you putting up the image?
Bear with me, I didn't realize it was on my screen.
Shall I just continue?
Yeah, just continue for the moment, David. We'll have the image up with you for you in a second.
Sorry about that. However, this was not a complete surprise, as I'd already been told about the map by its designer builds the connection with General Maciek. It turned out to be principally Jan Tomasik's concept. That would be the second image, apparently inspired by a 3D map in Belgium. The latter was a hotelier who had restored the Barony Hotel in 1968. During World War II, he was a Polish soldier under the general and became a close friend afterwards. Now, a key person who enabled Tomasik to realize his idea was a contact in Krakow's Jagiellonian University, Professor Klimaszewski, head of the geography department. Despite Soviet domination over Poland, he managed to authorize Kazimierz and some geography students to travel to Scotland every summer from 1974 to 1979 to carry out this task. use was made of a gypsum plaster model of the map based on Bartholomew's physical maps, but with a 5 times vertical scale, that is, per the military strategy models of the time. This was faithfully upscaled to 1 to 10,000 for the concrete version. 3D hills and mountains were carefully modelled in mortar on top of a strong base of Scotland's iconic profile. Originally, it was painted with some details like rivers, but that unfortunately didn't last winter weather. Nevertheless, the sheer scale of the map makes it an amazing sculptural site set in a glinting egg-shaped pool of water piped from a weir in the adjacent Ferrydean burn. Can I ask, are images appearing at all?
No, it's because
any images?
The PowerPoint file is not shared, Keith. That is why you don't have the images.
Oh, will I just continue anyway?
Yes. I'll show the images when the PowerPoint file is activated.
Right, okay. Well, at this point, there would be an image that Historic Environment Scotland produced. It's a computer model, and they did a complete digital documentation of the map. They were doing this with a number of their important buildings, and this was done by laser scanning and creating an interactive application for the centenary of Polish independence in 2018. Now I'm covering the background history, and this particular model was used so that you could actually find out all the Polish connections with Scotland on this model by pressing a number, and the text would come up. And it really is rather fun to explore the map that way. And it also allows you to tip and angle the terrain of the map at any angle. It's very clever, and it's very convincing. And you can even walk, if you like, inverted commas, up a glen and whatever. And to get to it, it's called something rather strange, but it's called Sketchfab, sketchfab.com, and you can then find the map. So I shall continue. This isn't going to be a very long account, and more details obviously can be found on Mapa Scotland's own website. However, as your association in Edinburgh is based in Edinburgh, you may be wondering how it was that I worked with Professor Traffas, and that was from 1993 to 96. At that time, I was in the city planning department, and my director, Graham Dunn, arising from this, a request was made for Edinburgh's assistance on how to sensitively restore the fabric of Kazimierz. Now, Kazimierz is an area of Krakow. It was a very rundown former Jewish quarter. It was coming to wider attention with the filming of Schindler's List, and you'll all know of the terrible Nazi atrocities of Second World War. And Kazimierz Traffas at that time, he was the director of the Department for Strategy and Development and a councillor of the municipality of Krakow from 1990 to 94, as well as being the head of the Krakow team. There was a team for the Berlin Senate as well, and I headed the Edinburgh team. Anyway, being an architect planner with experience of reviving Edinburgh's historic old town, I was appointed the EU project manager of an ECOS-funded team tasked with preparing an action plan. It comprised public and private sector experts, all working part-time from the three cities I've mentioned, Krakow, Berlin, and Edinburgh. And team meetings were held in the three cities. The report was published in 1994, again, it's all becoming, and was followed up with public consultations, etc., finishing in 1996. For Edinburgh, an ongoing outcome was the twinning protocol with Krakow. And you'll know, because you took part in it, the 25th anniversary was celebrated in 2019. Now, although Professor Travers gave a hint he'd been in Scotland earlier, it wasn't until 1994 that he told me discreetly about building the map. The trust had grown up between us, and he felt able to ask me to go and have a look at it and let him know. And that's when I have just explained, I went to see it. And he was so disappointed to hear of the map's poor state after all the effort in building it. Then following a further chat after a working meeting in Berlin in March 1996, perhaps rashly, I promised to try and have the map restored. But I do have many happy memories of working on the project with Kazimierz, and well, the team in total number was 34, and these were terribly interesting people. It was a wonderful experience for me anyway, and I think others in Edinburgh really enjoyed it. So anyway, I'd made this promise, and when I mentioned the map to a number of bodies, the Saltire Society, for instance, and the hotel itself, initially there seemed to be little interest. Notwithstanding that, it remained unfinished business in the back of my mind. Much later, on 5th April 2008, I took the Dovecot walkers on a walk around the Black Barony, ending at the map. And I put on my note for that to climb all the Munros in 3 minutes. They were most intrigued by it and strongly felt that something ought to be done, especially with the recent influx of Poles, because by then we were all members of the European Union. In May, I mentioned this to Roger Kelly, our late chairman. He died sadly just last year, and there is a photograph which I would love to be able to show you of him. But he was at that time convener of the Royal Town Planning Institute in Scotland. And we were on an outing of a retired planners cycle group. And I took the opportunity because I thought it'd be an idea if the Royal Town Planning Institute might like to sort of do something about the map. Then 2 weeks later, having persuaded him to come, I showed him an assistant around the map, and Roger was immediately enthused. And with his computer skills, we launched a campaign to restore the Great Polish Map of Scotland via a community website. Also, most helpfully, he organized a summer display at the Cowan Hall in Pennycook, aimed at finding volunteers in order to help to rescue the map. Thankfully, this worked. Keith Burns and others in a hill running group, you notice there's walking, cycling, and then hill running that are all to do with the history, came together to form a steering committee, which became Mapa Scotland Trust in 2010. While everyone contributed something, including hard work, if you want a practical task well organized, invariably an engineer is the answer. And Keith certainly proved that as our project manager. With its Polish origin, the map must have extra resonance for the Polish community in Scotland and for the consulate. Having Micah, our very organized secretary, gives us a brilliant and most appropriate link. Now, at this point, I was going to show and I don't know if I can show it on the screen at all. Does it show at all on the screen? Anyway, I've got here King Casimir. Casimir the Great. And I was rather intrigued because he has something in common with us today. Oh, look, there it's appeared on the screen. How nice. He has something in common with us. He didn't like getting his hair cut. And he actually lived through another pandemic. That was the Black Death. You know all about that in history, I'm sure. And he seems to have been a very diplomatic, rather good person, and expanded the boundary of Poland. And the other side of the note actually has Kazimierz, and you see it in Casimirus in Latin, and then on the other side you see Cracovia. So the other side, rather faintly, is Kazimierz and Cracovia. And so I kept this note, I think it's worth about £9, as a souvenir, because it seemed so apt. And maybe I could reach for some other things, seeing we've lost the... Well, I'll leave that just now. Maybe I'll do that later. But shall I just hand on now? I think we seem to have lost a lot of images, which is a pity. Well, I'll just say, dziękuję bardzo.
Keith, I'm waiting to be able to share the screen now.
Are you going to show some pictures at all? Or?
That should be available now, Keith.
I'm now looking for the share screen button, which, as usual, has hidden itself. I need some help, Kiro.
Okay. Yeah. Let's start. Look, go to the back. Sorry, go to the bottom.
Yes.
Yes, and the bottom of your screen.
Ah.
Yeah, can you see it?
Is that?
Yes.
Yes.
Is that?
How's that?
Yeah, we can see some of your screen. So if you go now to your presentation, yes, we are there. Fantastic. Here we are. Okay.
Yeah, that's it.
Excellent. Okay. Thank you, David. Let's go.
Yeah, shall I just talk to these? Just run through them and I'll make a quick comment on each one.
Well, I was going to okay. Just bear with me while I put the main screen on.
Technology.
Here we are, good, from beginning, and here we are, great.
Right, that's our logo, based on the Polish map, obviously.
All yours.
That's me. I'm not going to read it all again, but there is the map in an early...
I'll cover that.
Very bad state that you get before the... Just keep going. Just move it quickly. That's
Jan
him
Tomasik.
as a soldier.
Kazimierz Trafas.
He's the one on the right with the dark hair. And
Jan
Kazimierz
Tomasik.
on the right. And Jan Tomasik on the left. That's how I know him. And there is Roger, the late Roger Kelly, who helped so much in getting the website going in the first place with me. Really, I'm very sorry he died. Next one. This is the interactive model. And you can imagine that tipping this way and tipping that way. And you see there's numbers on it. And if you press those, they give you more information, rather like the little example there. You see the inventor of the portable landmine is a Polish guy. But all of these are related to different parts of Scotland. So apart from is that you don't have any of the other ones, the other images? Is that
That's
we
it.
come to an end with that? Yeah. So the other images haven't been recorded, right? Okay. Over to you.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. My name's Keith Burns. I'm an engineer, and this is something that came out of the blue for me. There's Barony Castle Hotel that many of you will be familiar with. I was there for a conference in 1996, which had nothing to do with maps or Poland or geography or anything that you're interested in at tonight's presentation. But I went for a walk in the grounds and almost fell into this hole down that wall, because it was even more overgrown than this. This was 1996. And to cut a long story short, I wandering around wondering what this thing was, which I thought was an old water storage reservoir. I found rocks in the shape of the Mull of Galloway, and then I found something in the shape of the Isle of Arran, which is there. And eventually, 5 minutes later, I had found Ben Nevis, Ben Lomond, walked over Rannochmoor, down Glencoe, and finished up at Cape Wrath. I seem to have stumbled into a three-dimensional relief model of the whole of Scotland. I was absolutely stunned, particularly because subsequent queries at the hotel led to the astonishment that no one at the hotel seemed to know anything about this thing. I couldn't find anyone even who knew it was a map of Scotland. And it took a long time to get to the bottom of what it was and who had built it. My motivation at the time was geographical and technical. I thought this astonishing creation had a lot of effort put into it. No one knows anything about it, and something ought to be done about it. But until I retired from full-time employment about 4 years later, I didn't have time to do anything. But after I retired, I raised a team of volunteers, of close friends, and we decided that we'd try to do something about it. The first priority being to find out who made it and when. This was the first breakthrough. I discovered David Cameron in Edinburgh. I've forgotten how I discovered him now, but he was an extremely valuable discovery. Is the audio at the right level, by the way, Keith? Okay. David revealed to me that he had been at this conference and met this guy called Kazimierz Trafas, who not only knew something about the map, but had actually designed and built it. I was absolutely stunned. And he was not in Edinburgh anymore, of course, because he'd come to Edinburgh at a conference in the early 90s. I learned from David Cameron and subsequently enlisted the support of Roger Kelly, who I'd not met before, and he was a good friend of David's. I'd worked out that Kazimierz Trafas must be about the same age as me, so he might well still well be alive in Poland. And this led some years later, I think in about 2004, to my wife and I flying to Prague with a tandem and cycling 1,100 kilometers to Krakow to the Jagiellonian University to find Kazimierz Trafas. Tragically, he had died 11 months before we arrived. But I did find one of his student colleagues who was able to reveal a lot of valuable detail about the map, particularly that it was built in between 1975 and 1979 by a bunch of cartographic students from Krakow, from the university, with the assistance of local labor procured by the then hotel owner, Jan Tomasik. Jan Tomasik was a quartermaster under General Stanislav Maček in the 1st Armoured Division that were posted to Scotland in 1941. I'm sure you all know more about this history than I do. I'm certainly not a historian. I would claim to be an apprentice historian now, after everything I've learned as a result of this map. But we discovered that Jan Tomasik was quite an eccentric character, and we believe that he, along with his old general, both of whom stayed in Edinburgh after the war, for the rest of their lives, in fact, they had this mad idea, because Jan Tomasik had bought the hotel in the early 1970s. They had this mad idea to build a model of Scotland, possibly as an interesting attraction for visitors to the hotel. And we believe as a gesture of thanks to the Scottish people for looking after so many Polish people at the end of the war. This is one of the few photographs we have of the map in its almost completed state in about 1979. We set about forming a charity because we realized it was going to cost a lot of money. We didn't appreciate how much at the time. And the first step was to create an artist's impression of what we visualized could be the finished product. And our objective, our long-term mission, was that we had to do this as an important historical monument, particularly as a piece of joint heritage for the Scots and the Poles, and as an educational focus for the new generations of Scots and Poles. And Micah will come to this long-term mission of this as a historical artifact for education. Our first priority was to start raising money, and for that we needed media attention, and it led to us managing to tempt TV channels to come and have a look at what we were going to do and why we were going to do it. I think this was one of the first TV companies that came, and we secured exposure on BBC, ITV, Polish, global internet TV, Dutch television. We got lots of media exposure, and as a result, we secured some major grant aid. The main tranches of grant aid that allowed us to start the work were the hotel itself, Barony Castle LLP. We had to secure a lease from them to do the work, and that was quite an important and tricky problem. We had massive support from the Polish consulate in Edinburgh, and eventually through them, the Polish Foreign Ministry, and the Scottish government, in fact, that isn't on this slide. We secured money from the Landfill Communities Trust, the Heritage Lottery Fund, Polish Connections Scotland, and your own society, the Scottish Polish Cultural Association, Scottish Borders Council, and the European Leader Fund. Our major supporters who helped us in securing media attention were Historic Environment Scotland, Christine Graham, the local MSP, who was a massive aid in the early days because she procured a debate at the Scottish government on the importance, the cultural and historical importance of this great Polish map of Scotland, as we had branded it. We secured through Janusz Szewczuk, the one surviving member of the team of students who we found at Krakow University, we secured the moral support of the Jagiellonian University. And last but not least of all, the small but very important team of volunteers who were going to do the work, because we realized that we probably wouldn't be able to procure any professional contractors who were capable of doing the work. And if we could, it would cost millions. So we decided we'd have to do it ourselves. And I can't emphasize enough the importance of this core team who were instrumental in making everything happen. Two members of which were Micah and David, and Roger Kelly, who we must not forget. By 2014, because this project has taken a lot, I estimated we could do the whole thing in 2 years. It's taken us about, well, over 10 altogether with planning so far. First job was to do some tree pruning so that big old tree branches didn't fall down on top of the workshop that we had to build as our base camp for doing the work and making tea and having lunch breaks out of the weather while we embarked on the work. Now I've got a succession of slides. Stamp your feet if I'm going too fast, but we can go back to answer any questions later on. This is typical of the state of the map a few months after we had started clearing, because it was very badly damaged by two factors. Frost weathering in winter, that is, it was a victim of the normal geological processes of freeze and thaw, and vegetation growth and roots splitting the concrete. There's another view a few months after we started clearing all the loose rubble. In fact, I kept a record of the volumes of material we took out of the map, and we estimate at least 250 tons of rubble removed mainly by hard manual labor. More general views of the state of the map before we actually started reconstruction. These are views of the progressive clearing away of moss and vegetation and loose rock debris. This fence had to be replaced by a secure fence in compliance with health and safety risk assessments, because there was public access. While we needed public access to publicize what we were trying to do, because we needed more money than we had raised so far. There's a viewing platform that we eventually replaced by a much smarter one that you will see shortly. This is the Isle of Arran. And if you know the Isle of Arran, it actually replicates the mountains. That's Goat Fell, and down there is Glen Rosa. And this was one of the features that led to me originally realizing that this was a map of the whole of Scotland and not just the base of an old water storage reservoir. We were working in all sorts of variable weather. It wasn't always a sunny, pleasant day for work. And at this point, you'll notice the original safety fence we put up that had to be replaced, the rather derelict pit wall, and rain puddles from, at the time, rainfall, because the original purpose, the original design of Kazimierz Trafas was that the map would be surrounded by water to represent the sea. And they installed water supply pipes to achieve that. But we now know that they were never successful in getting the map surrounded by water. mainly because the seabed was porous. And eliminating this porosity in the seabed cost us an awful lot more money that we hadn't budgeted for, and a lot more time as well. We had to recruit more labour, and we made a big breakthrough when the 2nd Division of the Royal Scots at Glencorse Barracks came back from Afghanistan in about 2014, and they were bored stiff at Glencorse Barracks doing office work. And you can imagine active soldiers doing office work would not be very happy. They were over the moon at the opportunity to come and help us. And this is the arrival of the first army convoy. Here are the great lads from Afghanistan looking at the new project that they had volunteered for. And they were fantastic. We had never seen people fill and shift full wheelbarrows as fast as these guys did. There was no sex discrimination allowed for our team or the army, and this is one of the number 2 Scots girls who was demonstrating that she could break the record for getting a full wheelbarrow up this ramp. We have no age discrimination. This is one of the lads, one of the little boys from the Peebles area Cubs, advising one of our squaddies on the best way to clear the rubble. This is the Outer Hebrides that was very badly damaged by frost weathering, and we probably 1/3 of the Outer Hebrides we had to completely rebuild. Typical photograph of a working party, and you can see that the conditions we worked in were frequently quite hostile. I think that was a frosty day, and I think we were standing on ice there. So we had to develop skills at not falling over whilst making concrete. We had to find where the original pipework was and replace it. And we replaced or repaired about, I forget the precise number, but hundreds of meters of underground pipework. And this was typical of some of the jobs we had to do. Another general picture of the map under clearance work. We had to be very careful about safety, otherwise we could be prosecuted, and we got this guy out. This is where we found that they had procured the water supply to the map, and we had to revive about 150 meters of underground pipework from this point in the adjacent Ferrydean burn to supply the map under gravity. We didn't need pumps to surround the map with water. At that time, drones were beginning to appear that were very useful from expert volunteers to take aerial photographs of the map for us. This is a typical picture of repair work to the underground supply pipe, where it had been fractured by a landslip down into what is quite a deep ravine. Another job where we had to be very careful about safety. Another picture of a repaired section of fractured pipe. And eventually we acquired the ability to resupply water for the first time since the mid-1970s from the burn to the map. We also had to provide a route for the water to get back into the ravine, because under our SEPA environmental license, we had to put all the water that we'd extracted from the burn back to the burn. And this is the new pipe we installed to achieve that. And there it is, fully commissioned. A picture of the rapidly improving map, where we spent months and months pouring new concrete, and we virtually reconstructed the Isle of Skye here, and North Uist, and Harris and Lewis, All the light patches are new concrete. And there you can see the Mull of Galloway, which was the very first thing I recognized that uncannily looked like the Mull of Galloway, and it might not be a coincidence. And there's the Isle of Arran. Some of the machinery that we had to use to do all this work, we had to pressure blast the moss. That was the fastest way to clear all this almost half a century's worth of moss away. Two of our original volunteers, David Peck and Nick MacDonald, who hung in with the project for the full duration and are still around. And this is a picture of the first admission of water to the map, when we discovered that the seabed was extremely leaky and we had to drain it all down again and seal the seabed with a very rare clay called sodium bentonite that expands when it's wet. And that was successful, although we do have to do occasional leak repairs. Getting closer towards completion, here you can see North Uist before we started rebuilding it. And sorry, this is North Uist, and that is Harris and Lewis, showing the extent of the frost weathering over half a century. We worked round the clock through the winter. There wasn't much we could do when there was so much snow cover, but it made for interesting photographs. There you'll see Ben Nevis, which we had a flag on shortly after that. Four other members of the team. You'll see a younger, youthful-looking David Cameron there, Jim Barton, a local farmer, Lynn Barr, and our president at the time, our chairman at the time, Nick MacDonald from Edinburgh. And this is a memorial bench that we installed in memory of Roger Kelly, our lost other town planner, David's old friend. We sorely missed Roger. I should mention at this point, I don't have a photograph in this set of him. Kim Traynor from Edinburgh, who was our historian and who sadly died of cancer a few years ago. Kim was the guy who did most of the detailed historical research that formed the basis of our website, telling the full story of the map, which is a much longer and complex story than I'm summarizing today. Drone photographs started appearing from lots of helpful supporters. There's an interesting one showing the map not yet flooded. There's the ravine where we borrowed the water from with the adjacent hotel. And access to the map, for those of you who haven't visited it, is across a footbridge over the ravine from the hotel to the map here. Eventually, we got the water to the map, cured the leaks, and we're now approaching completion. Occasionally, we had to drain the sea down again to cure leaks and then reflood it. There's another picture of the map surrounded by water, but lots of polythene sheeting over freshly poured concrete to stop it drying out before it cured. And there's the newly constructed Isle of Arran and Isle of Skye, North Uist and Lewis, where we did some major total reconstruction work rather than repairing and patching. I said that we eventually replaced the viewing platform. Here's the handsome new viewing tower that we installed to replace it. That's now quite a feature of the site. Now we're approaching, we were close enough to completion now to announce a grand opening day, and we finished in November 2017, and by dint of a very fortunate and happy coincidence, we had the grand opening in the year of the 100th anniversary of Polish independence in April 2018. And here's a beautiful photograph of the completed map. The black is water because of the atmospheric conditions at the time, with lots of snow and very bright sunshine. But that still, I think, is the best photograph portraying how amazingly accurate at that view the map is of the outline of Scotland. And you can see picked out in snow the axes of the glens. There's the Great Glen, Mull of Kintyre, Arran, Mull of Galloway, Edinburgh's there, Aberdeen in the sunshine over there. And taken on the same day, this is an adjacent field covered in snow, the map, snow-covered trees, and the hotel next door. You'll notice here that that's north on the map, but geographical north on the ground is that's south and that's north. So the map is rotated anti-clockwise 90 degrees relative to true north. And this is a photograph that was taken very close to the grand opening, when we had a visit from Arkady Jagotsky, the Polish ambassador from London. And it was on this, he had arranged to come to see it through the Polish consulate in Edinburgh. And it was at this particular occasion, when chatting to Arkady Jagotsky, I discovered that he not only knew Kazimierz Trafas, but he was a fellow student at the Jagiellonian University with Kazimierz Trafas. And when he heard that we were going to restore the map, he had to come up to see it. He became an extremely important supporter. This is an elderly Polish lady who, and a friend of mine, who quite by chance had come down to show this Polish lady the map on this particular day. And I introduced her to the Polish ambassador. And she was stunned because she thought I'd specially arranged for him to come up and meet her. So she had a very thrilling day. And it was all total coincidence. And this is Micah talking, I think, to the Polish Consul General. And that's a photograph taken at the opening ceremony on April 12, 2018, the 100th anniversary of Polish independence, with Arkady Jagotsky, the Polish ambassador, Fiona Hislop representing the Scottish government, members of our team. You'll see David Cameron there. This is Tomasz Trafas, who was Polish Consul General in the early days of the map, and a very important supporter, because when he was appointed Polish Consul General, I realized his name was Tomasz Trafas, and the designer of the map was Kazimierz Trafas. But I thought Trafas must be as common as the name Smith in Poland. And talking to Tomasz Trafas to appeal for support at the time, I said the name of the designer in Poland was Kazimierz Trafas. Could he be related? And he said, yes, he was my brother. Another staggering coincidence that led to the strength of support from Tomasz Trafas, the Polish consulate, the Polish embassy, and the Polish foreign ministry. Here's a representative of the Polish government in Warsaw. And here's a typical picture of what other people have done with the map since we completed construction. This was a church group from Lanarkshire who had a weekend religious conference at the Map, and they installed laser lighting and had a prayer meeting on a weekend evening with the Map floodlit by laser light and torches all the way around the edge. And I think you would agree, it's quite spectacular. And a drone view from a fisheye lens that is quite a spectacular picture. And a final photograph of the Map on an autumn day, a beautiful autumn day, with a sunny sky reflected in the seawater, and the Map painted a light, with its finish paint coated a light grey, and the hotel. I'll now, sorry to go through that very quickly, but I wanted to leave time for Micah, and if there are any questions on detail where you want any elaboration, we can come back. Thank you for your patience, and I'll hand over to Micah.
Hello, everyone. I'm Micah Kozwoska. I got involved with the Map through a friend of my husband's who was a member of the team at the time. And I'm afraid I can't remember even when I joined. It was several years ago during the restoration process, when it was probably not long started. And I must say, I found working with the team on Map restoration totally exciting, exhilarating, and just great experience. And it's unbelievable that what has been achieved, even though it took so long. But unfortunately, we could only rely on a small group of volunteers. Now, to carry on with our story, I just wanted to mention that our aims, one of our main aims, is raising awareness of the Polish contribution to the war effort, and of course the common heritage, the Scottish and the Polish. And we have been quite active in that respect. We've got a good website and a Facebook, and as Keith mentioned, we have been involved with several TV productions. The last one was a German one, which resulted in a big Wikipedia site in German about the Map, the history, and the war. So that was something quite positive. We also have been giving various talks to groups, community groups, general interest groups. We participated in various conferences at the Parliament and others. So this is something, talking about the future, this is something that we wish to be carrying on with. Of course, when we are permitted. At the moment, we can't do anything, but that's in our plans. And of course, this will also depend on the number of volunteers which we can maintain. The other very important aspect of our work is education. Education to school children. Everybody knows that fun activities are the best way to present subjects such as history or geography, for example. And we have been inviting and hosting visits from Polish language schools, Saturday schools, from the Polish and the Scottish Cubs and Scouts, who very enthusiastically embraced being at the Map and engaged themselves in lots of activities one of which is making this edible map of Scotland. And the other was a competition for the best painting of Scotland, which Keith was asked to judge, and I don't think he was quite keen to impose his views, but he that's what happened. Also, Keith had a very nice anecdote of a small girl wanting to climb Ben Nevis on a visit to the map, and he took her there. And I think if he would like to say that, to talk about it, it would be nice, because I didn't do it, but it was Keith who led this little girl on Ben Nevis, and apparently it was an amazing experience for her. So the map has an awful lot to offer to young people. And one of the schools, oh, this is a photograph, yes, the map has been incredibly popular. We keep getting lots of visits from people all over Britain, not just Scotland, and abroad, from abroad as well. So let me continue. And our promotion must ensure that this will keep happening. One of the schools we are working with is General Matchak's school, Saturday school. They're based in Edinburgh. And they have been coming and helping us with spring and autumn cleaning at the map. But recently I have approached the director of the school, Małgosia Firlit, to ask if she would be interested in assisting us in producing just a small brochure for her school about the history of the map. Because this is what we believe, this is a direction we believe the future of the map lays. We would like to get involved with schools, with local schools, and put an emphasis on education. Educating young children, both Scottish and Polish, is very important to show them the history of the links between the two nations. I'm not sure whether many children of Scottish families know about the Polish contribution to the war. And equally, probably quite a few children of the Polish families who moved here fairly recently probably don't know the full story. So it's very important for us to make sure that they do. And having discussed with Małgosia Firlit, or started the discussion about the little booklet, we actually came up with an idea for 3 bigger projects. We are planning to produce a book for children ages 11 to 16, which will be in both languages and will be available to download through the internet, so it can reach children all over, the Polish and English-speaking children all over the world. The other project which we are working on at the moment is a short film, which will be produced by a couple of young filmmakers from Edinburgh. And that will be aimed at children age 8+ and will be also available to the Polish and English-speaking school children anywhere. There is a huge scope in terms of education, and something that we might discuss at some point in the future is interdisciplinary project involving children from S1 to S3, linking to the curriculum on history, going through, why Tomasik and other soldiers found themselves in Scotland, to the Poland after the Second World War and what happened when the Iron Curtain fell. Geography, the importance of maps in the military, the importance of the Ordnance Survey map, the cartography of the map, and of course the design and technology, which it would be fascinating how the map was designed and created. We can achieve these things, but we need more people involved. So I just hope that we'll be able to recruit them. That's it. That's what I was going to finish on. So thank you very much.
I didn't want to interrupt Mazurek Dąbrowskiego, which was beautifully played over the last part of that. Thank you, Micah, David, and Keith, for all the work you've put into creating tonight's presentation, and also the short talks that you've given us about the Great Polish Map of Scotland. I'm sure that even those of us who've been to Barony Castle to see it at some point will have learned a great deal of new things about it. I'm certainly looking forward to going back at some point, since I haven't seen it since it was reopened. I still remember it was covered in grass. We'll quickly move on to the questions and answers, ladies and gentlemen, if you just give me a wee second. The first one I have is from Alex. Do we have a photograph of the wartime map which was used for coastal defence? David, is that an area you would know more about?
Well, I can answer a little bit about it in that when it was gone into, I think there was a real doubt as to whether there was a map there before or not. It was rumoured that the same site as the map today, that perhaps when the Polish officers occupied the barony building, that they had created something there as a strategic map, but we haven't had any real evidence of that. And mention was made of our historian who had sadly died, and he thought that it just wasn't sound enough for us to say yes, there was a map then. But you do wonder if there was something that was done there that had stimulated Jan Tomasik to actually create the map.
As a rider to what David said, Kim Traynor, our historian, who we sadly lost, did find a wartime photograph of the clearing in the woods with a putting green on it. So Kim eventually came to the conclusion that there was no map there during the war. The local mythology was that during the war, Barony Castle was being used as a Polish officers' staff training centre. And the rumour was that the speculation and the mythology suggested that they had built this three-dimensional model as a kind of strategic battle planning device, which we thought sounded very plausible in the early days, but we just cannot begin to substantiate that rumour, particularly when we discovered the real story of Kazimierz Trafas and Jan Tomasik starting to build a map in 1975. So I don't think there's any remaining uncertainty about whether there was a a map of this size there during the war.
So the next question, first we've got a request from Liz and Donald. Kiro, our technical expert, will be on that one in a second. But for the
Yes,
first, Liz and Donald,
yeah.
go ahead. Go on, Kiro.
Yeah, I mean, if I'll just have a look, and if I can make you co-host for a moment, and then we should be able to do that. Just a moment.
While Liz, Donald and Kiro are doing that, to our speakers, there's also a question, one that I've had before when visiting the map. Was there ever a plan to include Orkney and Shetland? Because sadly, the Northern Isles are the one part that aren't on the map. I recognise it would make it much bigger because Shetland particularly is a fair bit away from Scotland. But do we know if it was ever included in, they were ever included in plans?
Simple answer, no, there wasn't. Totally impractical. Nor was there any plan to represent St Kilda, which would be halfway across the farmer's field away from the site.
Or to include Rockall, which would start arguments with Ireland, as it still does to this day.
Yeah.
Actually, Keith,
we have had visitors. We have had visitors who have commented about Orkney and Shetland not being shown, and could we not put in a post or something to represent them? Again, you know, it wasn't done at the time. It's a listed structure, listed category B. You know, it would mean cutting down trees, and you know, we couldn't really do it sensibly. But well, I suppose you could put in a post somewhere, but you know, it's just that's what was built at the time.
Very quickly, Keith, would you be able to stop screen sharing for the moment, and then we can try and get the photograph that Liz and Donald have of that we'll hopefully be able to get up of the map in the 1970s.
Yes, I can see a button that says New Share. Would that work? I can't see a stop.
Probably.
Okay.
If you go to the top of your screen, there should be something which allows you to stop sharing.
Yes, got it. There you go.
Yes, and I gave the Liz and Donald the permission to share screen.
Thank you very much. Are you seeing the photograph?
We are now, yes. Oh, okay.
That was taken in 1975 when my wife and I, that's my wife on the left, believe it or not, we were at a function at the Black Barony Hotel and came across this amazing map, which was under construction at the time.
So we're standing on Edinburgh.
That's fantastic. What a super thing.
That is a very valuable photograph that we would much appreciate a copy of.
I can certainly do that. It's a scanned slide from 75. That's a digital copy. I can send it to wherever you wish.
We have a Mapa Scotland email address, mapascotland@gmail.com.
Keith, it might be worth writing it in the chat as well, in case anybody else has any photographs or correspondence they'd like to send to you.
Yes, but certainly that is an extremely valuable photograph because we have so few of the almost completed map during original construction. I'm going to type our email address in the chat window, and thank you very much indeed for that. That's really exciting.
You can see it's before the basin has been formed.
Yes.
And there isn't any retaining wall. So it's really good. And you can see how sharp the base of the concrete is. You can see the sharp edges of it.
Yes.
Yeah, that's fascinating.
So I'll
Wow.
I'll leave that photograph up for a couple of minutes. It's really interesting to see what it looked like
Yeah.
40 odd
Yes,
years
it
ago.
is.
And after that, I'll put up the screen I had at the start that also has the Map of Scotland's contact details on it again, in case
And
anyone else wants to.
that location, by the way, is the Firth of Forth,
Yeah.
Yes.
and the two ladies are standing around Musselburgh.
Musselburgh, yeah.
They're probably
Oh,
on Musselburgh High Street.
Which
And
tried to stand in Edinburgh. That's where we're from. That's where
the,
we're now.
these hills are the Oak Hills.
Oh, yeah.
So our next question, ladies and gentlemen, is from Jola Dembitska. Do you have any merchandise like calendars, postcards, stationery items for the general public to access?
Yes, we do. We do have some postcards left in our stock. They are available. If you contacted us at that email address, we could find a way to get some to you. The postcard shows the drone view of the snow-covered map. That's the only material that we have available at the moment.
Yeah.
We did have some T-shirts at one stage, which were rather fun. I like wearing mine. When I went for the jab, it was a nice loose sleeve on it. So I wore it.
Good for immunization.
And, you know, every time I've worn it, somebody makes a comment about it. And so I always have a leaflet in my pocket to hand to them. So the nurse has got, the jab has got a leaflet.
As long as you didn't touch it. Yeah. So our next question, this one might be more towards Micah, from Olivia Willis. Have you considered making the map a commercial project in the future? For example, including visitor centre, cafe, photo gallery, workshop centre?
I'll respond to that.
Yeah.
We have lots and lots of interesting and valuable and useful suggestions like that. But whatever we do crucially depends on someone with sufficient interest being determined to make it happen and run the operation. Those of us who have survived from start to finish, our average age makes us an endangered species that's under threat of extinction because we're not replacing our stock. We need young enthusiasts to take over from where we have managed to reach. And at that point, I don't think we're in a healthy position to take on big projects. We're still doing things, but something of that scale would need new blood with the time, the resource, and the enthusiasm to achieve it. I think the most ambitious suggestion we had was from some years back when Christine Graham arranged the debate at Holyrood on the importance of the map, and an MSP at the time that some of you may remember, Chick Brodie, said this map is so important that it needs to be taken and replaced in front of the Holyrood Parliament building. I think that's a great idea. It would be rather unfair to Eddleston, Barony Castle Hotel, and it would cost a fair amount of money. We've also been asked when we're going to add England. So lots of good suggestions. Each one needs a sponsor with the determination to make it happen. And then our reaction would be, great, off you go. We'll give you as much help as we can.
There is one more question from Olivia, but I'm first going to go to another from Aneta Lolo. Does the Barony Hotel have any specific role nowadays in the maintenance of the map?
Very little. They cut the grass for us, and they let us do things. We've done all this under a lease from the hotel. Personally, I don't think the hotel has taken best advantage of the presence of the map and its potential for attracting more visitors to the hotel could be exploited much more.
Yeah.
It's now there, it's available, and we have a lease. It belongs to the hotel.
Yeah, certainly I know a lot of people who didn't know it existed until relatively recently. So I don't know, maybe the hotel can do more about advertising, making more people elsewhere in Scotland aware of it. So the second question from Olivia is about the maintenance, the ongoing maintenance of the map. Have you considered, for example, commercial volunteering? Large firms, employees of large firms usually have 1 or 2 days a year given by companies to engage in volunteering as team building experience.
Yes,
Yes.
we sorry, Micah.
Yes, we have tried that. I tried that in Edinburgh, but that wasn't possible because the map isn't in Edinburgh. And I also tried the Borders. I can't remember exactly which place, but there is an organization which deals with this kind of thing. And they were very enthusiastic when I met with them, and they said, "Oh yes, they will make sure people know about it." But you know, nothing's happened. So I don't know. I don't know the answer to that.
We did have 2 successful team building exercises. One with the Royal Bank of Scotland from the Gyle, and another one from the Torness nuclear plant, who spent a very productive day at the map. In fact, they virtually reconstructed the Isle of Mull and the Isle of Skye in a day. So it's a fantastic opportunity for team building. And again, the resource is available to others now, particularly those with the initiative to decide what they would like to do, either routine maintenance. There's always a need for routine maintenance, of course. Yeah. And as we all get longer in the tooth and older, our resilience for routine maintenance, which is usually pretty basic, hard graft, filling barrows and operating, cutting weeds down. We're always short of volunteers, and we can always provide stimulating work for whatever skills people would like to bring to the map. We can employ plumbers, gardeners, historians, psychologists, you name the discipline, we can provide an appropriate job.
It would be rather good if we could have a lighting scheme. I mean, I think we could also be projecting information onto the map. You know, if there were companies that wanted to sort of pinpoint certain sites like distilleries or something, it would be wonderful. But a light show in the evening and in the dark would really show it up.
Well,
the voiceover and
the Lanarkshire Church Group demonstrated what can be achieved with their laser Bible weekend.
But you could have something at a higher level than just round the edge, you know. So there's opportunities there. It's just I think the hotel, as you know, Keith has been saying, it hasn't taken full advantage of it, and I think an electrical supply taken over to that side we could do things with that.
We have one more question at the moment, which is from Tadeusz Dipel. How is this linked to the Polish military presence in Scotland, and saying that his father was in various locations? David, I know you mentioned General Matrek earlier on, but are there any other units or people connected with the map?
The principal link is that we know that the Barony Castle Hotel was commandeered during the war for a Polish officers' staff training center. And this was in the early preparations for the Normandy landings. We understand some of this history is still under the Official Secrets Act. We don't know anything more about it, but there was a Polish officers' staff college there.
Not necessarily associated with any particular regiment.
That's right.
You see, I think that's part of the difficulty, knowing just quite what its role was. But as a training centre, it must have been very useful. You can still see the perimeter fence that must have been up during the war, the sort of concrete posts and so on. They may have new wire on them, but they are the original. You can even see the sentry point as well.
So a lot of sites throughout Scotland have stories like that. School buildings and other public buildings you'll suddenly find a Polish eagle on the side of it in Fife or other areas that have had Polish troops based at them during the Second World War. I don't think we have any more questions at the moment. Actually, I've got one quick one. Are there any really comparable projects of this type or on this scale in other countries?
No, one or two are worth mentioning. Not current projects I'm aware of, but existing artifacts. The first one, which still I think claims to be the biggest three-dimensional relief map in the world, which it isn't, is a three-dimensional relief map model of British Columbia in Canada, which the last time I looked on the internet, it was dismantled and stored in a building. But the area of this three-dimensional model of British Columbia is, the size of our own Great Polish map, just the land area alone, is 2.83 times greater than the relief map of British Columbia. There is another one which is very interesting because there's been no official recognition of its existence, and this is in China. If you look on Google Earth and you know where to look on in a very remote area northeast of about 400 kilometers northeast of Beijing, there is a three-dimensional relief model of the Aksai Chin Mountains in the Himalayas, next door to a military camp. The Aksai Chin Mountains in the Himalayas are part of the disputed border area between China and India. And we believe that this military model is, and it's enormous, it's much bigger than the Great Polish map, but we claim to be the biggest in the world because the Chinese say this one in China doesn't exist. But you can see it on Google Earth. And we think it is actually used for military exercises on a landscape replicating the disputed territory where the Indians and the Chinese have been lobbing shells at each other for decades.
Can I mention that we do actually have a map of Europe in Scotland? It's rather unknown, but in Fife, you know where near Kelty, where there was the mining, open cast mining. Well, Charles Jenks, the landscape designer, was started constructing as part of the rehabilitation of the ground, started building a little hill, a mountain, for each of the continents of the world. And the one representing Europe was completed. It's not being looked after, but if you climb up the spiral path up to the top, you'll arrive at some rather strange looking sort of monuments made out of large drainage pipes and so on. And then a little bit beyond there, in large stones, slightly abstracty, but is a map of the whole of Europe. And I don't think many people know about it. I mean, there's a lot of, broom and other plants growing up around the area, but there it is. And it even has Gdansk on it. But I think one of the guys working on it must have been Polish. And you can see the hill from the motorway. It's the hill that looks just a little bit strange. It's got things sticking out at the top. Not quite sure what that's meant to represent, but nevertheless, that hill that he's created is artificial and is for Europe. And then you've got one for North America, another one for, different areas. And they haven't been properly formed. And there's a pool of water at the bottom. Now, his idea was to do a reverse of our one, that the pool of water would actually be the profile of Scotland. So it was sort of like the reverse of Mapa Scotland. But unfortunately, as you may know, the company, the coal company, went to the wall and left the government with the cost of clearing up. So it was a little bit of sort of, smoothing of the ground and spraying on some seed. And that's what we have. We got left with some hillocks that don't look sort of normal, and one that represents Europe with a path going round and round, corkscrewing it round to the top. So if you have a little walk up that way and arrive at the top, you can see Europe and you can see Poland.
There's also, for those interested in these strange things, there's also a two-dimensional representation of the world at a public park in Denmark.
Other than Legoland, you mean?
Not Legoland, no. I think it's north of Legoland.
Right.
Could I ask a question?
Yes, certainly.
I mentioned this before. Some kind when I went with a tour with the Scottish Polish Cultural Association, I sometimes, quite a lot of people ask me, and where actually on the map the Polish soldier was stationed? And could not be exception, because the map is called after General Maczek, where his division was stationed. Could that not be somehow pinpointed on the map? It's just so much connection with Poland and lack of this. It was not just me, but quite a few the people who attend the tour ask me.
Yes, Isabella.
I remember when you were at my house, I mentioned this to you also. And when you kindly show us personally and talk about the map when we arrived, I also say, a lot of people asking me where actually the Polish soldier, especially General Maczek division, was stationed. And I could not answer this.
Yes, so, it has been done partially, virtually, with this three-dimensional laser scan of the map that David mentioned. It could be done on the surface of the map, and that would be great. It's just one of these projects that we need the resource to get on with, the volunteers to make it happen. And we haven't got around to it yet, but I think it's a great idea that should be on the shopping list.
Yes, exceptionally for General Maczek.
Yes.
Yes, because then the map, and for a Polish Saturday school, I'm sure Micah agree with me, will be great. So the youngster will learn.
Yes.
Even my
Mhm.
granddaughter, when she arrives there, and she plans to go again, she has been. So it was a very interesting talk. And on behalf of the Scottish Polish Cultural Association, I thank very, very much. You put a lot of effort, a lot of work, and what a wonderful friendship and what a wonderful memory of what has been done and what tremendous, tremendous work. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
So, ladies and gentlemen, I think that's a good time and a good place to finish off this evening. Once again, I'd like to say a huge thank you to Micah Kozwowska, Keith Burns, and David Cameron for all the work they put into creating tonight's talk and presentation. I'd just quickly like to say that we do have another talk coming up in a couple of weeks, if it would be of interest, about the piano of Felix Janiewicz, the Polish musician of the 19th century, who was also a founder of one of the sort of ancestor events of the Edinburgh International Festival. So that will take place on, I think, Wednesday, the 7th of April, but there will be more information about that on the SPCA's website, Facebook page, and emails going out to members of the SPCA as well at some point in the next few days. All I'd like to say, ladies and gentlemen, is thank you for joining us, and I hope you have the very best of health, wealth, and good fortune for the rest of this year. And we hope to see you at another event in the very near future.
Yes.
Dobranoc and good night.
Dobranoc. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you to our host.
Dziękujemy.